Today is the 3rd of Sivan, Tafshin Samech Tes. We're learning Hemshech Samech Tes from the Rebbe Rashav. We're on page Lamed Daled.
Alright, so we're reaching the Maskana in the Maimah of how Atzilus can be a mamutza bein ein sefer bli gvul and sefer ma'atzil and the nevoim of Biyah being as they are mamish gvul. And so the question was, how can between two inyonim which are completely ein arich, Legami has a check a mamutza, and also that involved the question Minei Ubei, that how's a child to be magbil in Atzilus there ha bli gvul. So we came to the conclusion was Alidei, the two inyonim of the tzimtzum of the ha'oras ha'oyer. There was a inyan from tzimtzum, and we're soon going to see it's also got to do with a arsa. That brings the oyer into a ha'ora mitzum tzemes, even though the Gabi Biyad still remains bli gvul. And when it get to the Kelim, we saw that they were in, according to the Eight Chaim and the Alter Rebbe, they were gvul mamish. The question was only how is a child that the bli gvul can be mislabish, and how can they be magbil mamish to the oyer ha bli gvul. And so we came to the concept of Hagbola Retanius. And we saw that the union of Hagbola Retanius, since the Mashpia is Magbil himself to Retanoihu, in order to carry out his Rotzen Mamish, Tatlis Retanoi, that means that even though he may be Magbil a certain union within himself, for the purpose of that Matorah and that Tachlis he has in the union, well, that doesn't limit him. On the contrary, that's only an expression of how really he is able to carry out both things at the same moment. The Hainu, he can still be what he is, B'etem, and yet at the same time he can be Mugbal Lefi the Matorah that he has in mind, although it's not Bedimin cloud to the union of Hechrechi, Hagbola Hechrechi, yes. And we saw what is a Hagbola Hechrechi, that's a koyach michutz la'etem, which is magbil there at the etem, that's a gvul and a Hagbola mamish. But then the etem becomes chonila mugbal kipshute alidei zeh. But that's not chayat Lamaila mitzad the immediate inyan of Gilui ein seif in Atzilas, because the whole inyan is a Gilui purely mitzad retainer is borach, and on the contrary, the Ika Shaila we began with was how is the Rotzen, how does it become Nitzamtzim alidei Atzilas to be a Rotzen lehavis, but the Kiruv to be mahavis as Biyah. So that's where we're holding on Lamed Daled. And we saw that about close to halfway down the page, just a little before, we saw that Gabi Biyah who bli gvul mamish, that the Inif and Atzilas Gabi Biyah is bli gvul mamish mikol mokin given shel Gabi Erein Seif who are ora nitzamtzimo liyei b'pinas gvul v'tachlis, and that's talking particularly about the oyer. Then since it was mitzamtzim to be a oyer pnimi, as we saw the Loshen, that's mamish meya in the kelim, that's a union from gvul, and according to the Alter Rebbe it's gvul v'tachlis, it has mamish in itself a specific goal or a specific aim. Ari mitzad zeh hein mizdamin lepchinas biyah, the mitzad that is spheres and Atzilas who have a certain dimoyen to a certain comparison to the spheres that they are in Biyah, or the Nivroim of Bria Yitzir of Asiyah. V'lochein, Atzilas, hu b'chinas mamutza, bein oyer in Seif HaMa'itzel l'Nivroim. and therefore it's possible to describe Atzilus as a mamutza, liyois, due to the fact, shezeu masha oir ein seif habligvul, meaning the oir, bo b'chinas hagbola ritzeinius, and we saw that hagbola ritzeinius means that there's no really emesa hagbola, it's only legabi the mushpoim from that hagbola, or not really legabi the amitius ha'etzem. It's not a inim from hagbola at all. And then he writes in brackets, hein b'mohus hakelim, v'hein b'bchinas tzimtzum ha'oyer. That inyan of hagbola retenias applies to each of the two entities of the mamutza. What the two stadim, as it were, in the mamutza are the oyeres and the kelim. The oyeres are that which is shot to the tzad elyon, and the kelim are shot to the tzad tat in the hainu to biyah. So the Rebbe said that each one of them has in himself the inyan hagbola reteniya, and in the kelim he said it's the mahus hakelim. So every lashon, of course, in these my mom is very meduyak. Mahus hakelim means that each keli has got in himself a certain mahus. A mahus means already a specific, definable entity or concept in him, and that's what it means, the inyan of mahus. In the kelim, it's that each one of them becomes, as it were, a specific entity. I feel according to the parties, what he holds, it's only koyach hagul, but nonetheless it's a specific entity compared, like he says, to the pshitas of their mokir. So the shorter kelim are already ayin for mahus. So the hagbola of mahus is a much greater hagbola than stam tzimtzum. When I say stam, the infant tzimtzum that we saw in the oiros. So therefore the Rebbe says that mahus in the kelim is also a hagbola retenias. It's not mamish hagbola in a form of hechreach be'ezishu kilukwer, which is magbil the ein seif. No, he himself, as he wrote earlier, the lashon ekshel kus naase b'chinas mahus chochma v'chesed. In other words, that the etzem ein seif himself allows himself to become mahus chochma v'chesed. And like the Alter Rebbe, we quoted in the Geras HaKodesh, chapter 20, the famous Geras HaKodesh. And over there, the Alter Rebbe uses the expression "Shehakelim heim elakus ein seif be tzimtzum otzum," that he's being metzamtzum himself, magbil himself into the form of a kli. Since he does that mitzad ritzoinoi, then that's only nuances within the ein seif for the sake of hashpah. To biyah, or not that biyah, it's anything of that nature. If we go with the concept of hagbola retenias, then to a certain extent, b'chola inyanim, b'chola oifanim, then we come somewhat to the point of the paradise. That he says it's all inyan for koyach hagvul, for the sake of biyah. So the truth is, we have to say that l'kola pirushim, that since it's a hagbola retenias, then the rotzen is really aiming at something which is the tatus of biyah, which means that all these hagbolas are really for the sake of biyah. If we say that they're made barotzen, then it means they're not really happening b'poel mamish. There's no actual meaning for gvul mamish b'poel, even with the das of the Alter Rebbe, even though it is mamish gvul, but it's not, because really it's only the ein seif ekshu asat atzmo bezeh b'hagbola retenias. That's what he hints at in the brackets, that both mitzad the kelim and mitzad the tzimtzum of the oyer, or that order of hagbola retenias applies. And since it applies, then it's not really an amitius inyan for hagbola afilu l'das arizal. V'alidei zeh ubchinas mamutza beina b'ligvul mamish lebchinas hagvul mamish. And that was our whole question. And so, now that we've discussed the whole inyan from those two, that stadim of the and the keli, then that's the more or less the maskana of the beer. V'zeh the veilam atzilas Hagam shelo yeshon b'chinas hazman. The hascholas hazman hu b'malchus kanal. Mikol mokim shayir b'chinas seder zmanim. So what he means by canal, that we saw earlier, right at the end of the last mimer, right just before we began this mimer. On the top of the Omer over there, the Rebbe said that the Inyam from Zman, that's the Ika Hakbola of Biyah, or that's Dafki Mitzad the Inyam from Sfiras HaMalchus, because in Sfiras HaMalchus you have Hashem Melech, Hashem Molech, Hashem Yimlik, that we see that in Chitzenius HaMalchus, our Chayach or to Biyah, we see the Inyan of Zman, Melech, Molech, and Yimlik, but that's the, and as we pointed out, that wherever you talk about minutes moving one ahead of the other, then you run up against the concept of Hagbola. That's the immediate scene of Hagbola. And therefore the Alter Rebbe hinted, the Rebbe hinted over there that the Ike Hagbola in Biyah begins and really is Zman. And Mokim is a further Indian of Hagbola, but it's that's like you might call the Indian a further Hagshoma in the Indian of the Hagbola. Of the Ike Hagbola is Zman. And like we see, and also we will put dogmas on that when I get to the life of mensch for Chulu. So therefore, the Rebbe's already told us that the Indian of Zman is Shayach Kipshutai in Malchus and in Malchus Gufa, to Malchus actually Shayach, to Biyah. There you can talk about Zman. However, said the Rebbe, L'mayla mi'atzilas, in the Sharia spheres of Atzilus Adel L'mayla mi'malchus, there is Shayach Shom B'chinas Seder Zmanim. There is an union of what we call order of time. Okay, the Isa b'Medrash Rabbah, Malamid Shohoya Seder Zmanim Koidem Lochein. Well, that's an unusual statement, or that's put down in the Medrash Rabbah, in Sivan Gimel in the Medrash Rabbah, Bereshis Rabbah, on the Pasuk where it's written, we stated, Vayihi Vayihi we said, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Vayihi, no, we said, Vayihi Erev Vayihi Boiker Yom Echad. They say Vayihi Erev Vayihi Boiker Yom Echad. And what the Inyan from Erev is Laila, and Boiker is Yom. So it's written Vayihi Erev. So it should be just written Yehi Erev. What it was Vayihi Erev? Well, that's being mamshik from a previous point. So it says the Medrash, Erev or Boiker already means he's chalkas in time. Or that's already shaykh in the Bria, which is Bereshis Bora, that's already in Elam Bria or Elam Agashmiyim. However, since it's written Vayihi Erev, that's coming from somewhere. That Vav connects it back. That there was Kilo, Einif, and Erev, Vavoiker, and Amachayama, Vrega somewhere else that we don't know. Malamet Shehoya Seder Zmanim Koidem Lochein. And then immediately after that, bring to Gemara a memory from one of the Balei Medrash. He wants to say that that's the Indian that Malamet Shakodish Baruch Hu Hoya Boina Oilamas Umachriva. Well, that comes to teach me that the Eivester used to build worlds and destroy them. And it's well known that that is referring to Olam HaToihu. That's referring to the Spheres in Toihu. We see that the Medrash says that the Seder Zmanim Koidem Lochein is al derech v'di'in from Voina Olam Achrivan, means that there must have been some passage that there was a certain Olam and it wasn't anymore, and then there was another Olam, or that Olam was Batel, and then another one came about for Chulu. So that's what the Gemara brings, or rather the Medrash brings a dogma of Seder Zmanim. In Chassidus Tes a bisschen anderes. In other words, the Chassidus Tes is that Koidem Lochein, that since Vayihi Voike is talking about Malchus Tatzilis, then there was a Seder Zmanim. Koidem Lochein is referring in the other spheres of Achilas prior to Malchus. In the Medrash, it's a little bit mashma that he's touching on Olam HaToihu, that there was like Olam HaToihu, and in that itself there was a time when it was good and a time when it fell, Boina Umachriv, and then that was also prior to the union of what we have afterwards, a Seder Mesuda, Vayir, Vayveiki, what the Torah, a Seder Mesuda of the union for Atzilus and even the Ashpo and the Biyah. So therefore, we see that Lakola Biuri Ma'ila, there was some sort of a order which was prior to the actual coming about of time in Olam Abriyo, or Olam Spiyabi from Kloli. So there was what was that time? We can't talk about in Atzilus about time, because time is a nivro, time is a created entity, and in Atzilus there's no created entities at all, Elakus. So therefore he said, that's the Lashon of the Medrash, that it was a Seder Zmanim. V'inyan Azman ba'Atzilus. You can't talk about Zman in Atzilus. He says, Hu inyan ha'kedima v'ya'ikhu shebeseder Atzilus ha'es ha'sfira. He said it's the inyan of priority and lateness, that is a kedima, earliness and lateness, you might say, in the seder of the development of the spheres. And he said that what certain spheres developed, they led to other spheres, and they were mishtalshel, one from the other. In Tanya, in the famous Geras HaKodesh, taught that until you get down to Malchus, the spheres in Atzilus are mishtalshel, but they're ilav v'olu. You need to understand which sort of ilav v'olu it is, even for ilav v'olu. The fact that there was one sphere developed, and then it gave rise to another sphere, then that's already the union of like a proceeding and a lateness. First of all, was the thing that came about, and then it gave rise to its development into another sphere. So it means that one was there, and then came an idea. So even though you can't say that was a union in time, it took kach for kach hours, or kach for kach minutes, or kach for kach days, or to happen. But we say that one merged into Gilui prior, as it were, to the other. Or that prior, or that's what we call Seder, that's what we call Seder Zmanim in Atzilus. We can't even talk about that. Everything just sort of happens instantaneously, even which is completely beyond our understanding. At least in Atzilus we do talk about a certain union of priority or something or other in time to a latter development which we describe as a latter union. And therefore says the Rabbi, that's the union that the Medrash is hinting at. Shebeseder Atzilus or Esespira. Shebetchila Ne'atzla Sfiras HaChochma. At the beginning, literally, the first appearance from the Pshitas of Keser was the union of Chochma. And Ne'atzla doesn't mean it was made, but Ne'atzla means it was just mizgaleh and was made clear from the Helem that it had in Sfiras HaKeser. V'achasha nifsak Atzilus HaChochma Ne'atzla Sfiras HaBina. And after there was literally interrupted, or there was completed, the nifsak from Loshen Hefsek, the inyan of Atzilus HaChochma, then we went on to bring about the coming into Gilui of Sfiras HaBina. So what does it mean by saying nifsak Atzilus HaChochma? I already know how they are in Atzilus. We said be safe. That maybe not mamish. Bilti gvul amiti, but also upon the rain safe. You want to touch nifsak. So according to the Ramban, that was very good. We mean that there's a certain gvul at kama chokma is a inyan from chokma. It's not just an everlasting inyan called chokma. It's loibe chokma. Yediyah ba'al it is. It's l'mayla legamri from chokma the piyah, but nonetheless it is a inyan which is called chokma. Therefore the Ramban learned that even though it's chokma adain. So even according to the Paradise, then it's a union of koyach ha-chokma b'vad, but even that implies that it's got to give rise to another koyach of another union. He even agrees that these are esa sfira. And according to the Alter Rebbe, what it's mamish ha'inyan from Gvul, and moving that it's nifsach le'achar izman, or when I say le'achar izman, le'achar gilui masuyam. Yeah, in other words, that once we complete the actual gilui of the spheres of Chochmah, then it's nifsach, and then we, when I say then, as a certain development from that, as then ha'inyan shel bina. So we see that certain things have been given almost as we might call first turn. They've been given I keep forgetting the word, primordial, that's not exactly the word, priority almost, as we might say, in that they are the Reishis HaDvarim, they're the Reishis HaGilui, and then as a result of that, there comes into Gilui D'Inyan Bina, what it's developed from the Nakuda Sachachma, Nakuda B'Heichola, with the whole Riches that's Mavur in other places. V'chein, said the Rebbe Kula, so it goes with all of them. And as we know, that the Moichin, which are Chochma Bina, or they give rise to the Midas, which are Chesed and Gevurah and Tiferes. And then the Inyan of Chesed, Gevurah and Tiferes, they didn't give rise to a lower form of Midah, which are called Neitach Yesod. And then you have from Malchus, which is already a separate Inyan, as we've seen the whole way through. That's Inyan from Nisnasas. The Inyan, Avali said, Lamaila mi'atzilas, Einu, I'm sorry, where are we? V'chein kulam, Dezer shai rak b'atzila, Lefi sheboim b'chinas yischalkes, or b'chinas yishtalshel zemi. In other words, what's killed the mafteach that leads to this whole idea of prior and latter, is because things are interdiffered clearly one from the other. So, mitzad the shleimus of the yechoilas of the Eibush, he could have brought them all about, track. I mean, there's absolutely no problem. He could have all brought them about basachar. Of a vibal that he wanted, there should be this Inyan already, of Ishtausel, which was a preparation for the close Inyan of Biyah, of bringing everything down in a way that would be close to Biyah, and therefore this Inyan of Ishtausel, Sasphiras, is as he points out over there in Tanya. So that interdivision of one level to the other, and particularly the Ishtausel of one level to the other, the interdevelopment of one level giving rise to another, well, that requires that I have this Inyan of prior and latter. That's what leads to the concept of prior and latter. Obviously, in the elements which are lamaila, aval lamaila mi'atzilas, enu shayach Inyan kedima ve'ichu, kamesh kosev b'mokem, acher, like we see in Ak, we saw that Ak is the Inyan from Mamish Gilui Ayin Seif, primordial, Adam Kadmon. And even we saw in Elam Akudim, it's Kol Esa Oiris, Akudim B'Kli Achas, it all just happens that one essential Iskalas, Dibure, Machshavte, Kodesh Baruch Hu, Chashuvim Meiser, it all just happens. Like the Zohar Kodesh says, Berega Echor, Nasu Kol HaElam, it's for Kol HaYishtausos, B'Chulu.
Why do we still say Adam Kadmon?
Yeah?
We still say Kadmon. We're talking about Ak.
Haman?
When we're talking about Ak, why do we still say Kadmon even though it's above Tzilos?
Har?
No, when we say Ak,
yeah.
Why is Kadmon part of that? Because it's above Atzilus, so theoretically...
No. We point out the word Kadmon means primordial. Kadmon means Lamalamiyazman. Kadmon doesn't just mean old in time. It means completely moved on the contrary. The word Odom is the problem. The word Kadmon is indicatory. That's like the Ursula now Tzimtzum. You follow? Hare, says the Rebbe. No, I'm sorry. Avol Amayla Me'atzilos Enu Shayich Inyan Kedima Ve'ichu, because they all come about immediately. Ba'ifan Echad, the Berega Echad Nasu. And when we say Rega, we also mean a Rega. We just mean that they come below Seder of Icha Kadima. We said Lamaila, I'm sorry, Hare, Da'atzilas, Hagam Shemovdo Be'erach Mi Biyah, it's moved out in Erach from Biyah, Liyoisa Elakus, Mikol Mokem, Yeshlo Shaychus Libiyah. Shazor B'chinas HaMamotza. Well, we just saw that the whole idea of Atzilus is to bring down the oiris and the kelim into such a way that they'll be able to be a mocker for bi'ah, and they have to be dapke miskariv to bi'ah, and they have a certain shaychus. But even though we saw that the Ike shaychus was in Malchus and in the Rotzen, which comes from Malchus, but the Rebbe is pointing out that Beklolis HaAtzilus, there's a certain shaychus, since all of them are part of the Mamuta. You can't say that only Malchus is part of the Mamuta. All the Esespheres are part of the Mamuta. And they all assist in bringing the oil down from the higher level of the Mamuta to the Tachlis of the Mamuta. Therefore, we have to say that all of them have a certain shaychus to the union of Bi'ah, even though they're Muvdolim Be'eret. And so we see that the Taich Muvdal means something which is separate altogether, but the very fact that you say it's Muvdal, well, that tends to imply that you're talking about whether some way of looking at both of them together, as it were. But you say this one is Muvdal, then it's Lagami not that, it's Lagami Mashu Acher, or Afu Pikain. I don't know, but I, for some strange reason, I seem to feel that that's having a excuse me, a rather heavy effect on me. The air conditioner, I guess it can be turned down some way, or no? I don't know, but the last few minutes I've been, my head has been, thanks very much, my head has been swimming there. It's sort of strange weather, I feel as if I'm chilling. I mean, it's common by me, it happens by me quite a lot, but it's not good that we've still got at least another half hour to go, and I can't sit like that, otherwise I'm just going to really get chilled. And I'm even wearing a coat and everything. Do you mind opening the windows? I mean, would you be able to put up with it? I apologize. No, if you leave it closed, it's going to get very stuffy.
For 10 minutes. And then
huh?
For 10 minutes. So
right.
You open the window now, then all the cold air goes out right away.
All right, good, okay. The main thing is, how do they say in Yiddish, Drike is all sein zufrieden. The main thing is he should be pleased. Good, okay, thanks. Yeah, I understand. Right. Okay, so therefore, says the Rabbi, Muvdal Berach means that we're looking at them how they already have a certain shaychus or basis of comparison. Therefore, use the expression Muvdal Berach, and that's obvious because they're elokus. Mashihin Bi'ah is already only Nivroim Yesh Mi'ayin. Mikol Mochim Yesh Loi Shaychus LeBi'ah. Shezo B'chinas HaMamut Ad Sheshayach Shom B'chinas Seder Zmanim. In other words, when we saw that the Ike Inan of Nivroim is really Zman, the Ike Hagbola of Bi'ah is really Zman, like we saw at the end of the last Maimah. The same thing here, the Rebbe is implying that the Ike connection that links Atzilus with Bi'ah is the concept of Zman. In other words, that there's an inyan in Bi'ah which is already a delicate beginning in some form of shaychus to the inyan of Zman. And that leads later to Hashem Melech or Hashem Molech in Chitzenis HaMalchus, and in Bi'ah it becomes Zman Kipshutei. Therefore, we see in the Samech interesting hadgoshes on certain points that the Iker inyan of, as it were, determining, or as it were, being bochen, how do you call it, testing and sizing up the concept of a Hagbola is really time. It really is man. And Mokim is only a further development of that. But the Iker is time. And, if you're misbeinen, then you see a takazay. You see that the Ikea thing which determines the whole Hagbola of things is time. And anybody who wrestles with time knows very well just how much of a Hagbola the union of time is, and how it really determines the limitation of everything. And therefore it's interesting that over there it learns from day and night. The Medrash of Malamed Shai says Manim Kedem L'chein. That day and night all have their own particular inyonim. And once it becomes night, then there's all sorts of inyonim that the Zman affects you kach v'kach, and by day it affects you differently. So therefore, the beginning of the whole connection between the Mamutza and the Tzad Hasheni, which is Biyah, is the union of this Seder Zman. And therefore, that's the Ikar comparison between Atzilus and Biyah, and it only makes Atzilus muvdal Biyah, not Mamish Ein Oreich like. V'hainu, lefish Atzilus, hu b'chinas gilu ha'helem levod, mi b'chinas erein seif ha'ma'atzil. Shezei inyan Atzilus, shehu loshen afroshes ha'ora levad. So the Rebbe said, to understand that, Favur Siddur, that there's already a Seder Zmanim in the Inyan of Atzilus, and even despite the fact that it's moved over here, none of us are the Shaykhs, he said because Atzilus is what's called Gilu Helem Levad. Now, there's all sorts of concepts in Chassidus which indicate like the passage from one state to another, but they have different terminologies and they have different implications. So one of the main ones is what's called Gilu Helem. And then you have one called Yesh Mi'ayin, for example. Yesh Mi'ayin and Gilu Helem are very different. They're like two extremities in the Seder of difference in these different inyonim. So the inyan from Gilu Helem, without going into all the other ones right now, the inyan from Gilu Helem means that the inyan was there in a higher state. It was kolol in a madrega l'mayla gavoya yoter. And all it did was come b'derech yorida mi iskalalas madrega ahi into Gilu. However, Muvan, the fact that that's called Helem and that's called Gilui, means that since it was kolol in a way that wasn't noticeable as a word to the Mekablim, then even though it was there, it was in a higher state. And the inyan Gilu Helem means a descent. It means a yerida on part of that inyan. Ober, it doesn't mean a shinui ma'us begamri. Because if it did, then you wouldn't be able to say that it was really there in a higher state. In other words, that the inyan of the spheres, how they are. In Arich, for example, they're really there, but they're just in a very higher state. And then the way they are in the lower levels of Arich, they're already becoming a keser, proti to the inyan from Atzilus, they're even more kolol, and they're even more present in certain higher states, and all they do is they come lidei gilui, albeit, as we'll see, it's through certain jumps, as you might call them, certain springs, but not completely shaloi be'erach. Therefore, that's called gilui ahelem, meaning the same meaning that was in the higher madrega now comes out, but it comes out through a certain yerida into what's called hakshoma. It becomes a little bit more a clear entity than it was in the madrega shalamaylam. That's called gilui ahelem. So therefore, the Rebbe said that the gilui of the spheres in Atzilus, the way they come from Lamaylam Atzilus into Atzilus, that's the inyan from Gilu Helem Levad. It's not Yesh Mi'ayin, and it's not other forms of Gilui. It's purely the inyan from Gilu Helem Levad, meaning only that. Mipchinas Erein Seif HaMa'atzil, from the state of the Eibishter, how he's already Ma'atzil. In other words, he's the one who makes the spheres come about, meaning he's already got them, as it were, kolul b'toich, and he's going to give them forth. Well, that's the idea of Ma'atzil. Shezeh inyan Atzilus, but that's the whole concept of the word Atzilus, shehu loshen hafroshes ha'ora levad. It's two inyanim. Atzilus has in itself the idea of being only like a separation from something higher, hafrashah. What hafrashah means, to separate something off from something which is already there. And it also means that hafrashah implies a inyan of ha'ora. In other words, how do we get that hafrashah? we get that the higher Madrega gives only a ha'ora from itself. And so that ha'ora literally divides off or comes off b'derech separation, but not b'derech hevdel or b'derech ein arech from the mokir. And therefore it's called hafrosha, and it gives rise, the hafrosha implies ha'ora. And that's, how do we see that? So he said we learn that from the very mokir, the word atzilus in the Torah. Okay, it's written, Ve'otzalti min haruach asher olecha. Now that's interesting. It's not this week's parsha, but it's next week's parsha b'haloitzcha. Over there, it's written that when the Yidden demanded, how do you call it, meat, they wanted to eat meat, or the whole thing. Later, they were given the slav by the Eibush. How do you call it, the slav? How do you translate that?
Quail? Quail?
Quails, yeah, very nice quails. They're given these very fatty birds called the slav. So the Eibush, Moshe Rabbeinu had times to the Eibush. He said, "May I leave basar? I can't busy myself with such inyonim of bringing down things like basa to these people. It's too much for me." So therefore the Eibush said, "Im kain," he said, "Es foli shivi mish miziknei Yisro." You should gather together for me 70 people. And then it's written, yeah, Ve'otzalti min haruach asher alecha v'samti aleihem. I will literally take off from you your ruach, and I'll put it over on them. And then later it's written b'poyel that the Eibush, they came all together, and it's written vayetzol. The Eibush literally made an atzilus from ruach shel Moshe v'noch ala zakenim, and it rested upon, as it were, the zakenim. So therefore we see that there was a in it. So if you're going to say so the problem being that he couldn't provide basa, but alidei that there was this atzilus miruche onto these people, then they could maybe handle it. So if we're going to say that atzilus means that we just gave over what Moshe Rabbeinu had and put it on them, yeah, then we haven't achieved anything. We're not going to help, because just like Moshe Rabbeinu can't possibly do with such a leader, they also can't. So therefore, we have to say that the atzilus ruchei shel Moshe upon them doesn't mean we just took ruchei shel Moshe k'Moshe and put it on them. We must say that it's a hafrasha. It's like a separation off, and it's in the form of only a ha'ora l'gabi Moshe Rabbeinu. Or on the other hand, if it's something completely and utterly not Moshe Rabbeinu, then it's not going to help, because they've got to at least be in some form of leadership and nevuah. Something seems to hit me. I don't know what it is. I've been very weak for the last few days. It's very difficult for some strange reason. I'm sort of spinning with a slight dizziness. Anyway, not terrible. So if we're going to say, then it comes out that they will be mamish in the same madrega as Moshe Rabbeinu. What have we achieved? And yet, on the other hand, if we say something completely not Moshe Rabbeinu's ruach, and how can you say tzalti min haruach asher alecha v'samti aleihem? Edify. We have to say that we have, as it were, both inyonim. It's like you might say we have our cake and we eat it too. That on the other hand, it remains Moshe Rabbeinu's ruach. Or on the other hand, it's not mamish Moshe Rabbeinu ruach. It's only a hatzolah. What hatzolah means that we're mafrish, we separate off in the form of a ha'ora, but it's not a dover zar lagamri. And that's the whole idea of atzilus. That atzilus means that from the Eibush, how he's ma'atzil, we bring down our oil, which is only a hafrosha kaviyochel from keser, and from the inyonim how they are in arich. Or on the other hand, we don't lose the whole inyan how it is in arich. It's it's a hafrosha and a ha'ora, which remains elokus. It just comes down in a lower state, that eventually it should be able to become shayach through further parsois and further inyonim to the inyonim of biyah. Over how it is in Arif, it's just not able cloud to come down to the union of the makablim. That's the word atzilus b'kol mokim. And that's what we mean by the word atzilus. And this is the mokim for them in the Torah with the whole beer that we just explained. And Afar says that Rabbi atzilus hu b'chinas gilui ha'helem, albeit shezeh inyan atzilus hu loshen hafroshes ha'ora levad u'kamoi v'atzalti min haruch asher alecha. I will literally separate off the ruach which is upon you. It wasn't nimsha mamish the very atzmus of ruach shel Moshe. They also wouldn't have been able to give ashpoas basar because they would have been the same as Moshe. Rak mipnei shenimshach ha'or levad hoya be'efshoram hashpilas atzmon b'ashpoas. In other words, even though they got this hafrosha bilvad, it was still for them a hashpara. But it was a hashpara that could be achieved some way. And the way it is in Moshe, he just said, mi'ayinli. He said, I just can't do that. It's not cloud in my shoriyat. Which means that I'm still retaining to a certain extent the Havdalah of Moshe Rabbeinu, but I'm within a certain range that I might be able to get down through hashpara to that inyan, and yet on the other hand, these people all became Nevi'im and they all became leaders of the people. And it's well known that Eldad and Medad, they had a whole Nevuah, and Yeshua came to Moshe Rabbeinu and he was somewhat upset about it, and he said, how dare that you got these people that are acting like Nevi'im and so on and so forth. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, Mi yitain shekol ha'amiyun Nevi'im. My whole purpose was that I wanted them to gain the union of something similar to me, the union of Nevuah Mamish, and therefore the Targum Yonis and Ben Uziel is masber over there, that the Nevuah that certain of these people, Eldad and Medad, they had this amazing Nevuah about the Achris Hayomim, not just about the Knesset, Le'erot Yisrael, nor Afila, the union from the Yemais Mashiach and the whole Arichas. What some people claim, and it's very fascinating, that the whole union of the atom bomb is hinted at over there in the Targum Yonis and Ben Uziel, in Parsha Ba'aloscha, in the famous Nevuah, as he represents it, of Eldad and Medad. What certain peoples might say, well, isn't that Ashgacha Praise? I didn't intend mentioning that, but it just so happens that I did. And to our great sorrow, and to what should be the sorrow of the whole world, and what should be the anger of the whole world, to the point that something's done about it, that I was told, I didn't know myself, but I was told by a very reliable Mokeh that North Korea has an atom bomb, and that yesterday they made an actual test of the atom bomb. They blew off an atom bomb underneath the earth. But everybody knows, Aleph, how terribly Masukan just to have an atom bomb in the hands of Azochim Shagoyim is terribly Masukan, and to let it off under the earth is just ruining the whole universe, ruining the earth, because the whole problem of the surface of the earth is a lot hotter because of these atom bombs having been blown under the ground, and it's affecting the Arctic, this very heavy melting of the ice in the Arctic and everything. And according to a lot of scientists, it's due to the fact that these things have been blown up underneath the earth. And the amazing thing is that everybody knows that the Iranians have, and they're much more powerful and sugar than what Korea is, albeit the Koreans also Mutarofim and Goyim. And ever since Sharon, they've been talking about it, and they've been saying, oh, yes, maybe we'll do something, maybe we won't, or maybe we will. In the meantime, the whole thing's been building up to the point now that they've got a huge atom bomb business over there. But his mom, when they began speaking about it, they didn't really have any. And so all the people kept saying, oh, yes, nothing, yo, he's going to go over and bomb the whole of Iran, and we're going to bomb it, we're going to blow it up, and it's not going to be there anymore, and we're going to... come on. He's a zamin shlamazel, as a gornish of a gornish. Not he holds by doing, not he could do it, and not it's going to happen. So in the meantime, they're just building and building and building in a way that they're threatening the whole world, and nobody does anything about Cain and Tutko. So anyway, I don't know what that's all about, but anyway, you got it. So, oh yeah, that's Eldar and Maida, that's what they say. Is maybe they knew what they were talking about, and we have to hope that the emes of Pshat and their nevuah is b'chesed u'rachamim. It's not. At least say Amen.
Amen.
Oh. So the Rebbe, if it would have been the Ruach Moshe, it wouldn't have been possible for them to be mashpiras atzman b'ashpaz basar. Ukamei kain hu be'inyan atzilus lamayla. Shezeu b'chinas hafroshes ha'ore. It's a separation of a ha'ore levad me'er ein seif ha'ma'atzil. Yeah, v'ha'ore zu hi bo b'chinas tzimtzum. It even comes to be mislabish, mamish in the kelim. V'gam nimshechas al yedei haparza. Not only it comes through tzimtzum, but it's also nimshech al yedei the parza, in order that it should be able to become fully that in and of oil pnimi. Which parza? A parza shebein hakeser el hachokma. In other words, there's a parza between keser el hachokma. Well, I told you a new concept. We've been used to parsais from Atzilus into Biyah. Yeah, the parsais on Malchus to Atzilus to get into Biyah. Now we hear that from Chochmah to from Keser of Atzilus to Chochmah. There's already a parsa. So here we can see then that the inyan and the symptom is one inyan. Parsa is another inyan, like we pointed out the other night. And without the parsa, we can't really achieve this type of hafroshes ha'ora that we're looking for. On the other hand, we can't possibly say that the parsa is mamish mishana di'oya b'tachlas hashina, because if it was, then it wouldn't be atzilus, it wouldn't be atzalti min haruach asher alecha. So in Cain, we've got to say that both this tzimtzum and this parsa are very delicate in yonim, which still retain the fact that it is Ruchei Shel Arich and Ruchei Shel Keser, not Mamish Ainian Zah altogether. So he says in Cain, what's this in the Parsa ben Ukameshakos Bilakuti Shas Me'arizal. That's a small sefer of Likutim on my More Chazal from the Gemara, from the Talmudi Arizal. It's called the Likuti Shas Me'arizal. Tiba masku lechi umiati es atzmeich sheyesh mosach bein olam lo olam. He said there's between all the olams there's a curtain, a mosach, and he said v'chein bein akling atzilas, between ach, which is keser hakloli, to atzilas gamkein mosach. And he said v'hainu a mosach shebein keser lechochma. That's what we've been talking about. There's a mosa between Keser and Chol. So what's this Indian of L'chi Me'ati Esatz Meich? What everybody's familiar with, that's a famous Gemara in the sector Chulin, where the Gemara describes the whole Indian of the Miutaya Yoreach. And Rashi brings it down and hints at it somewhat in Parsha Pinchas in reference to the Korban Tomid, that Rashi brings over there Vasir Izim Lechatos LeHashem, that there's a Sa'ir which is brought as a Chatos for the Eibishter. So Rashi, why does the Eibishter need a Chatos? What's it does? So the Eibishter Kaviochel says, Havi Olai Kapora Shemiyatati Esayo Reah, that I made the Reah small, you should bring upon me a kapora kavioch the Eibshter needs a kom chatos tefa. Would have been possible, but it's not to be moyer the zichreinis, because you got would always be all the time that you weren't here. A couple of years ago, I gave a shiur on that right, a shiur Claudia, about the whole from Avio like kapora and all from Yata Tes Urea, and I can't sit in it anyway. It's one on yes.
So why is it a bad thing that Hashem?
Yeah?
Why is it a bad thing that Hashem limited the son that needs to be macham?
Oh, why is it a bad thing that he needs a kapara? That's very good, Maisha. Well, I was hoping to dodge that one because it's not really my concern here, but just very briefly, Einoch Hanami. Well, why does the Eibshter need a kapara? So the Inyan is that Ali Day, what he was mamayat as hayoreach, and she went down and she became shatu, Bela Mizbiah, and she became what we call Rosh L'Shualim. Instead of being Zon of Laraya, she became Rosh L'Shualim. She becomes like literally the head of the foxes. Yeah, you're familiar with that expression? Because you're not Pirkei Ovid. That she should be a Zon of Laraya, is really Rosh L'Shualim. And she becomes that. Through that, there can be a infin Yanika L'Chitanium and all sorts of inyonim that the Oreach is an even for Miyut. She doesn't have the same teikah that she had prior. And through the Inyan from Ribi Tzimtzumim and the Inyan from Malchus, well, that can give rise in certain Eifanim in the lower Oilamos to a Yanika L'Chitanium. Therefore, the Eibshter said that since I was Memayat as Areya, and as a result of that, indirectly, there came out a Inyan from Yanika L'Chitanium, and not Cholila, the Eibshter made the Yanika L'Chitanium. And the ones who make the Yanika L'Chitanium are, unfortunately, we. But the fact that he gave rise to such a possibility, and therefore he said he asked for a kapara, you have to bring Kavioch for the Eibshter, so he'll So you say, well, that's a lot of Kabbalah and Pnimis Ater. Rashi is not just Mefurish. It's a Mefurish Rashi. In Pshut Yisho, Ikra B'derech Drosho. Anyway, suffice it to say that the Eibshter says, Miata Tes Yoreach, and how did he do it? He said to the Yoreach, L'chi Miatias et Esatzmeik, you have to go down. So that's also a very fascinating diuk. In the end, the Eibshter didn't do it. He told the Yoreach that she has to go, the Yoreach herself has to go do it, Kavioch. In other words, the Inyan from Malchus has to be mitzamtim herself into Biyah. That's ki'ilu, that it's a shlichus, or a doing on the part of Malchus itself. However, that's another diuk in Inyan which ain't kind of mochim hari b'zeh beregez there. However, what it means in simple terms is that there was a miyut in the Inyan from Malchus, and that Inyan of miyut, caused a hilim between the Inyan of Malchus, Tatzilus, and Biyah in such a way that it can eventually be a hilim gomo, and a filo Inyan from Yanika L'Chitanium. There was the Arizal says that there's a Inyan from a Keser, a parsa between Keser Ela Chochma, and he's talking about another Keser. He's talking about the Keser, the parsa between Atzilus Lebi, because that's L'chi Miatias Atzmei. But since he's already talking about parsois, then the Arizal says that not only is there a parsa between Atzilus Lebiah, there's also a parsa between Keser Leah Atzilus. That's what he writes over there. So mainly the Keser between Atzilus Lebiah that I understand, the parsa between Atzilus Lebiah that I understand. Or was it a parsa between Keser Leah, L'Chochmat Atzilus? So there was a Rebbe, but that's what we mean by saying that between Achla Atzilus there's also a Mosach, how do you call it, a parsa. What a Mosach is an Aramic, is a Hebrew word for the word parsa in Aramic. What Aramic in parsa means like a curtain. V'hainu, a Mosach shebein Kesele Chochma. The Malchus Ta'ach Nasa Kesele Chochma, that the final aspect of Ach, well, that becomes a Keser to Atzilus, and therefore it becomes Shar to Chochma da Atzilus, but between those two Madrigas there's a parsa. So the Rebbe says, V'yesh lema shezeh inyan oyer mayim rakia. Oh, that's the three madregas of oyer, mayim, and rakia. Amavur b'moki macha sheyesh b'chinas rakia shelamayla mimayim. Even though rakia is the third madrega and mayim is lamayla mi rakia, the truth of the matter is there's also a rakia between mayim la rakia, between oyer la mayim. There's also a rakia. It's also through a rakia. So, what's the meaning of oyer, mayim, rakia? It's brought down in the Zohar Kodesh, and the Alter Rebbe brings it in the Siddur. That it's a very interesting lashon. The Zohar Kodesh says over there, we say in Kapitel 19 in the Tehillim, Yud Tes, we say that Yoim LaYoim Yabia Oimer, V'layla LaLayla Yechaver Doas. It's one of the psukim in that capital. As Yom LaYom Yabia Omar, let's say. The Eibishter expressed himself from day to day. So the Lashon Omar, says the Zohar Kodesh, that's also a big madrega in its own right. And that's Yoim LaYoim, Yom is Gilead. From one Gilead to the other, then there's Omar. And what is the meaning from Omar? Eish, or Oyer, Oyer, Mayim, Ra. Here. They stay taught in the Zohar Kodesh. In other words, if those three words are three separate words in Lashon Kodesh on their own, there's a remez in the word Omar in that capital Tehillim L'das HaZohar to these three levels between Yoim, LaYoim, from one Gila Lakus to another. You got Kilu a Parsa Beinayim, and that's, well, yeah, Oyer, Mayim, Rakia is not all Parsa. Oyer, Mayim, Rakia is different madregas in their own right. But you got these madregas, or inyonim of Oyer, Mayim, and Rakia. So the truth of the matter is that there are two ways of Chassidus is masbir this inyan, or maybe more than two ways, or two close dika ifanim. One of them is rather difficult to understand, and the other is a little bit more, but sof kosof, the Alter Rebbe in the Siddur brings both of them more or less one immediately after the other, or one alongside the other, which means that ultimately they probably are the same basic idea. Suffice it to say that Oyer has got to do with the inyan from Chochmah, how it is in Keser. In other words, like we'll see, the inyan from Chochmah Stimor, for example, the inyan from Chochmah, how it is in the Madrega of Ari. And then we'll see that there's Mayim is Chochmah, how it is Spirits of Chochmah, Koyach HaChochmah in the Nefesh Ordo. And like we see that Chochmah is not a clear, it's sometimes you know exactly what is the idea in Chochmah. And so just like water moves, and it's sort of, it's restless, and it's not a defined thing, it's a simple thing, simple transparent liquid just moves around. So Chochmah isn't any fixed hasoga yet, it's just the beginning of hasoga. But it still could go in different ways. When you have the nakuda in Chochmah, you don't know yet what you've really understood. And you don't know what's going to be the Alam Maskona. And then you have Rakia, what that's a fixed, that's put down in the Zohar Kodesh, that Rakia means a fixed, as it were, the water is solidified somewhat. It means a firmament, that the water's gone, as it were, crystallized into a type of thing called a firmament. That means that it's already become a specific, limited hasoga begolu, and that's called bina. Therefore, that's Oyer, is the inyan from Chochmah, albeit though in Madregas HaKeser, Mayim is the inyan from Chochmah Kipshute, and Rakia is the inyan of a Glidu Maya in the Lashon of the Zohar. It's already separated off and somewhat crystallized, and that's called the inyan of Rakia Bina. Those are the three madrigas. And Mamira, they're themselves like the Klolos inyan of a Mamutza between Lamailami, Atzilas, and Atzilas, or other Ifan that we explain, those three madrigas. However, Chiddush here at the Rebbe is that there's a madriga of Rakia, like in the middle, it's not written in these three madrigas how they're described, albeit it happens to be there. And that is that between Oyer and Mayim, there's also a Rakia. In other words, if we say that from Mayim you go to Rakia, what we're now saying is that between and Mayim there's also a Rakia. Dainu, from Keser, from Chokhmah, how does in Keser, into Chokhmah Geluya, you've also got an Inyan of a Rakia, like a hefsek, which solidifies something in a level which is not yet solidified, BMS Beklau. So therefore said the Rebbe, that's the Inyan of a Rakia, which is between the Inyan of Keser and Uyur, Uyur and Mayim, Keser and Chokhmah, that's the Inyan of another Rakia. The Hine Mayim hu b'chinas Chokhmah. V'yesh b'chinas Chokhmah hagluya v'Chokhmah stimua. Chokhmah stimua, like we said, is Chokhmah how it is in Keser. B'chinas Chokhmah stimua, nikra, that's the Inyan for Keser. V'amshocha mib'chinas Chokhmah stimua. V'Chokhmah gluya, Chokhmah how it is in Keser. The Chokhmah hagluya, which means Chokhmah mamish in Atzilas, hu alidea rakia, but that's through another rakia, not the rakia which is bina, but from another form of a rakia. V'hu, k'may shekasu, b'maki macha, b'inyan ishtoi mayim, kashor chado. He went silent completely, that he went speechless almost, as you might say, for one moment. So maybe that's what we should do. We just declare we're all going speechless for the moment, and we'll call it a night. Because I see everybody's, maybe because of the air conditioner or what it is, or lack of same, everybody's shuffling around and looking impatient and looking at me as if, how on earth and when is this all going to stop, etc., etc. However, just to say, this Loshen Shteimen Karega Choda is written in the Zohar Kodesh. It's a Loshen in the Zohar, but it's similar to what happened in the Gemara Masechta Beitza. You guys, you already learned Beitza, he did or he didn't, I don't know about you. But in the Gemara Masechta Beitza, right near the beginning, in Daf Ov, I think it is, Daf Hey, steht dort that somebody asked Rav a Kashia on something that he said, on halacha what he said. Asked him a Kashia, and it's written, Shosik Rav. He just kept quiet, he just went quiet. Shosik Rav. And that's it. So everybody says, what on earth is that? Rav didn't have what to answer, he didn't have what he was asking Kashia, Shosik Rav. So he went quiet. So different opinions of Rosh over there, he says, the halacha is according to Rav. So people say, wait a minute, I had to ask the Kasha and he never answered. He said, oh no, he said, Rav didn't even need to answer. He was just so sure that what he said was right, he didn't need to answer the Kasha here. So some people are mad, well, they didn't need to answer, that's not fair. I in effect, the Kasha, you still holding what you hold, so you have to answer a teret. So he said, no, that Rav was just shosik, in order that he should go up into a higher madrega inside his koyach hamaskil, and then blease affected, he would have come out with the right answer, and it says, he feel blease affected, you won't even bother telling you about it. As he stayed in the road, kacha lomed the road. Remember, we say that sometimes when a person wants to produce in his opinion, a much deeper and greater Indian, then he sort of, he goes quiet. That's also put down in the Zohar, also as our mom said. And it's written a slightly different Russian. He he went completely silent, Kariga, Choda for one moment, and that's the Inyan of what we call Ishteimamas. And it says that going quiet and working upwards. That's what you guys got to do. You're going to go quiet, and you're going to work upwards. You're going to work upwards and not work downwards. Because everybody seems to all of a sudden become tremendously, today there wasn't any minyan and all of tirutzim and all the vainin and all the shreyin, and they didn't mean it, they did mean it and they couldn't, and this one schlocked. And I asked 2 or 3 people, what are you doing? I said, oh, I was schloffing and I'm this and I'm that. No. What's with you guys? What's with Canada? How are we going to have a, what the Yeshus call it? They call it a Schlafstunde. You never heard about a Schlafstunde? The time in the day for sleeping. Schlafstunde. The hour for sleeping. The way you guys are looking at me now, I think we've already got a Schlafstunde right now, we don't have to. Anyway, it should be good. What are you guys going